Radio, on demand, and in your podcast feed.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, a conversation with Cameron Dawson at New Age Wealth.
When you have price action like this, it usually does precede more volatility, which just means that we should get used to seeing some more of this chop. We're looking for the 6,500 level where we're trading right now to hold. That's really important. That's your 100-day moving average. If that doesn't hold, it brings 6,100 in play, your 200-day moving average, which would also see this be peak back in February. So if you got to those levels, you certainly see more oversold conditions. Notably, the market is not oversold yet externally on something like an RSI. It's also not oversold internally, meaning Brent hasn't been totally washed out yet. So all of this put together, probably except more chop insurance.
We had the NVIDIA numbers Wednesday evening, setting up for a good trading on Thursday because it seemed like the AI play was still very much in play, but then it wasn't.
Yeah.
So how important is that AI theme as a growth driver for the overall market? How important is that still?
It's still incredibly important, and we think that there's an important nuance to the NVIDIA numbers, which is that NVIDIA's strong earnings actually makes the questions around AI overspending even louder.
Okay.
Because the AI questions were not whether or not companies were spending. We knew that. We knew that by the CapEx guidance, so we knew NVIDIA results would be good. The big question was, are people who are spending on AI CapEx, are they earning a return on it that is justified to different shareholders, not just their equity shareholders, but now all of this debt that they're raising as well.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcast. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com. This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The Department of Transportation has designed a new crash test dummy that will make cars safer for women. The one they've been using is merely a smaller version of a male dummy, even though women are more likely than men to be injured or killed in a car crash. Experts say the new design will help save thousands of lives. President Trump has signed an order lifting 40% tariffs on Brazilian food products, including coffee, fruits, and beef. The move marks the latest reversal on a string of tariffs that were imposed earlier this year and provides some relief for Americans struggling with high grocery bills. And Dolly Parton already has a line of frozen foods, a hotel in Nashville, and her Dollywood amusement park. But now the country icon's opening Dolly's Tennessean Travel Stop. It's a restaurant and shopping experience in Cornersville, Tennessee, set to open next summer. Stocks rebounded to end a volatile week.
Stuck at the red light here.
93 points, up over 1%. The Nasdaq was up 195.
All right, now it turned green. Now we're going to start rolling.
Bloomberg Radio.
This is the next broadcast scheduled at my time. There's still traffic here in New York City. Still traffic.
You're listening to the Big Take Asia podcast on Bloomberg Radio.
You got this yellow
We're talking about how far China has come.
yellow cab here next to me.
To become the world's biotech superpower using gene-edited animals. Brian Wallach is 45 years old, a husband and a father of two. For much of his life, he worked as a lawyer and political organizer.
Well, we finally got off the main street. Now we're in the side streets here. We still traffic around.
I was diagnosed with ALS in 2000.
It's not even 9 o'clock yet, so there's still traffic around.
My wife, Sandra, and I had just...
And plus, it's a Friday, so on Friday there's traffic all night, man.
ALS,
All night until 4 o'clock in the morning.
is a neurodegenerative disorder where motor neurons are gradually lost, leading patients to slowly lose control of their bodies.
For me, this has meant a gradual loss of my ability.
And ice cream was good. That fudge vanilla ice cream was good.
I couldn't accept that timeline. Instead, I chose to fight with everything I had to change it. 8 years later, I'm still here.
Today, Brian and his wife Sandra are advocates for the more than 30,000 Americans living with ALS. They founded the nonprofit I Am ALS in part to advocate for research funding for a cure. And some of the most exciting ALS research to date is coming out of China.
Have the companies do something that nobody in the world has ever done. That is China's goal, like to be a global
I hope you get 20,000 tickets in your lifetime
Carolyn Kahn. She says China is
for
taking
doing
a
that.
controversial approach to finding cures to diseases like ALS.
China sees
That was a maricon. A maricon, as the
development.
Puerto Ricans would say.
The U.S. and Europe take a
Maricon.
editing animals, in particular large animals like pigs, monkeys,
The stupid BMW guy
growth, its use of gene-edited large animals.
that went around
So for years, this
just to get in front of me to cut me off.
He was studying to find a solution to ALS, and his lab was making ALS animal models. First, they were putting.
Now, I wish he gets 40,000
but the mice
tickets,
didn't show any symptoms.
or maybe
He never went
60,000
to
tickets. Look, there he is. There's the white BMW asshole.
mice. The pig
He
divided
did all of that, racing, speeding, all of that, and I still caught up to him. What an idiot. What an idiot. I hope you get 60,000 tickets.
to the big animal.
You white BMW.
Developers and scientists test the
White BMW.
By comparing the
Ball liquor, tire
that
liquor.
of mice models, John discovered a clue
All of that, and still, I still came up to the same exact spot.
that led to the development of a new drug he says could help 90% of ALS patients. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has approved the therapy named Snuggle
Yeah,
One
we got
for
some
human
crazy,
trials.
crazy drivers in New York City, that's for sure.
That drugs like these could help its biotech industry move from creating mostly generic drugs to the far more lucrative business of making patented medications. But the practice of using large gene-edited animals in the drug development process is raising ethical questions. Carolyn says Professor Jha himself was conflicted.
He was definitely happy because for all the years work, you see something that is becoming successful. But he also mentioned he was sorry for the
Construction at 9 p.m. Who's doing construction at 9 p.m.?
You know, like what is right, what is wrong, how much can you do this, where should we draw the line, right?
It's not like him around here because he's doing construction at night.
The world's biggest and most powerful economies. And the
That
markets
restaurant is kind of.
that drive this ever-shifting region. Today on the show, we find out how far China has come and how far it's willing to go to become the world's biotechnology superpower, and whether it could really change.
Idiot bump. They're called idiot bumps. They're not speed bumps. Those are called idiot bumps that they put all over around the city here.
Up spending and drug development, and it's made changes to much of its regulatory regime to mirror Europe and the U.S. China's biotech firms have got lots of financial help from the government, and they explicit support the Chinese president. In 2015, he said the country should become a global scientific and technology power. He declared biotech and gene editing a strategic priority. Bloomberg's Carolyn Kahn says, until recently, China's biotech.
Look at this house here. This is a good looking house.
Today, though, it's focused on
Look at that. That's a good looking house.
proprietary medications.
Because
That is a good looking house there. You see that?
money.
And look at this one. This is another good looking house.
In Europe, when it came to creating new
Oh
drugs.
boy, look at this idiot bumps. This is another good looking house.
1,200 new formulations.
You see that?
Leading out Europe,
Oh
including the
yeah.
US. In 2015,
And look where these houses sit. There's the water right there. Oh, turn on the light. Got to turn off the light.
Today,
There's the water right there. Look at that. See that water?
Are generating the highest number of innovative
Oh
drugs
yeah.
now from China.
China's
There's the
move to
water.
global biotech was formally revealed in 2016
Oh yeah.
in the country's 5-year plan. The plan opened the door for China to begin using what has become one of the most effective tools, biobreeding, or genetic editing. Andy Greenfield is a geneticist and reproductive biologist at the University of Oxford. Scientists have been working on this technology since the 1970s, but Andy says they've only recently learned how to actually edit an animal's genetic code.
The most common way to do that these days would be to use CRISPR-Cas9, which is a genome editing tool that we've had now for over 10 years.
Andy says gene editing an animal is complicated enough, but using that animal to cure a disease is more complicated still. It's not always clear which genes need to be targeted to replicate the disease. Figuring that out is expensive and time-consuming.
So, for example, DNA, it might be you want to specifically model what happens when you change one amino acid in a sheep or a goat or a mouse. And that could be tricky because it means that other things could happen in the process of trying to edit that gene, which are undesirable and unwanted.
When gene editing technology first started being used, scientists worked almost exclusively on gene editing in mice. But over time, they began editing the genomes of larger animals. And he says large animal models are most helpful to scientists when rodents aren't big enough or won't live long enough to be able to mimic a disease.
When it comes to neurological disorders, to model human neurological disorder almost requires having a brain which is at least comparable to the human brain, perhaps which develops a condition over time, which is always possible in a rodent model where the average mouse only lives for 6 months.
Drugs that treat neurological diseases are prized in the drug development world because they're so difficult to make. China has several development. This is one.
There are definitely a lot of innovative drugs in the pipeline, but the drug development phase takes at least a year. And in that process, you constantly need money to grow into the pipeline.
To support making these drugs and its broader biotech mission, China and it keeps tens of thousands of animals in these facilities. Scientists can apply to them to get a certain type of monkey or a certain type of pig for their research.
So the centers, you go to their website, they proudly exhibit what they have. This animal, this monkey, whatever gene is altered with whatever condition. There are also the biotech companies now trying to gene edit the dogs.
And if gene editing wasn't controversial enough, China is also pushing into an even more sensitive area of biological research, cloning.
Actually, China cloned the world's first dog with a certain gene-edited disease, and also it cloned the world's first monkey with a certain gene-edited disease.
Chinese scientists first edited the genes of monkeys that had sleep disorders, anxiety, and depression. They then cloned the animals to create a larger pool of patients with the same ailments, all with the idea of accelerating drug development.
In the top universities of the research institutes, there are scientists doing monkeys, for example, to develop them into having autism.
And Carolyn says the companies involved in gene editing and cloning don't just run experiments on the animals, they also sell them. Last year, the global market for genetically modified animals in biomedical research was estimated at $15 billion, more than twice what it was less than a decade ago. And China has become one of the biggest suppliers of lab animals in the world.
It has probably the world's biggest population of monkeys that is commonly used in developing drugs and vaccines.
Editing the genes of larger animals like monkeys or the pig that Jia Yicheng used to treat ALS is still controversial in the West.
We reached out to the Chinese government for comments. We sent a request 3 times, but we didn't get any answer from them. We asked how to regulate the industry, especially when there's so much demand on this kind of research, but the animal welfare law is not there yet in place.
While the U.S. does allow the use of large animal models, the majority of the 20 million lab animals used in the States are mice. Animal welfare is a major factor, and while Carolyn says it's also a concern for Chinese scientists, it tends to be weighed differently.
I think a lot of scientists believe that what China is doing now, even the kind of work that is limited to the labs, to the university, to the research institutes, will in the future contribute to China's advancement in the rivalry with the US, with Europe, because China is doing something that is very hard to be done right now in the West.
Gene editing is a big, fast-growing business. In the agricultural sector, scientists have found ways to develop cows without horns and salmon that grow faster to adulthood. And gene editing is also growing more popular in the area of scientific and drug research too, although exact numbers are hard to pin down. But Bloomberg's Carolyn Kahn says one thing is apparent: genetically engineered animals are increasingly in demand.
It is an increasingly important strategy to have animals that can better mimic human disease.
And if you want to work on these kinds of animals, China is the place to go. Carolyn says that's because there's not much oversight in the country's labs, and the main focus is on disease control, not animal welfare. This has been the Big Take Asia podcast on Bloomberg Radio. I'm Juan Ha. And we spoke with Bloomberg's Carolyn Kahn, Ryan Wallach from I Am ALS, and Andy Greenfield from the University of Oxford about China's ambitions to become the world's biotech superpower using gene-edited animals.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS News. It's CBS News on the hour by O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I'm Jennifer Kuiper. A big announcement from Georgia Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. CBS's Linda Kenyon with the latest. The once staunch Trump loyalist who turned Trump critic posted on social media saying her defense of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein unleashed unacceptable backlash.
Standing up for American women who were raped at 14 years old, trafficked and used by rich, powerful men should not result in me being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for.
Greene also cited the administration's policies running counter to the America First platform the president professed. CBS News, Washington. The U.S. Supreme Court now stops a ruling that tossed out Texas redrawn congressional maps. Loyola Law School professor Lori Levinson. Justice Alito has allowed the new map to remain in place at least for the next few days, while the Supreme Court considers whether the new map drawn by the Republicans does violate either the Constitution or the Voting Rights Act. Lawyers for Texas had asked the court earlier today to issue a stay and effectively let Texas return to the maps it passed over the summer, which redrew 5 Democratic House seats to make them more GOP-friendly. President Trump is giving Ukraine less than a week to respond to his 28-point plan to end the war with Russia. CBS's Elizabeth Palmer reports.
President Trump has said he'd like to see the deal signed by Thanksgiving. A very tight turnaround. Zelensky has only tweeted that he will work with Europe and the U.S. at the level of national security advisors to, quote, make the path to peace truly doable.
Delays and cancellations for travelers in some airports today as the Thanksgiving holiday travel period begins. This woman is trying to fly from Dallas to Fort Lauderdale.
When we got here, our flight had been delayed a few hours, and then when we checked in, right after we put our bags in and got in to check out, it got canceled.
31 million people are expected to fly during the Thanksgiving holiday. Prosecutors have filed a voluntary manslaughter charge against an Indiana homeowner accused of killing a house cleaner after she showed up at a home by mistake. WTTV TV reporter Jesse Wells.
The suspect was being held without bond following his arrest on Monday. During a brief court hearing here today, the judge set his bond at $25,000 along with GPS monitoring, but he will not be on home detention as he awaits his trial.
The NCAA won't allow athletes or athletic department staff to bet on pro sports amid betting scandals. The organization's membership has voted to rescind a rule change that would have permitted those bets. Is CBS News.
Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for your car care needs. Get the parts and service you need fast from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
When I asked Scott Lucky if his last name had anything to do with his success in the trucking industry, he laughed and said, well, Mike, I guess you could say I've always been lucky. But when I asked him how he and his family grew Lucky Distribution Services into the company it is today, he didn't talk about luck at all. We work hard, he said. We keep a close eye on the bottom line, and we treat our people the right way. In other words, Scott Lucky makes his own luck, which is precisely why he switched to Pure Talk Business. Last month, I paid the big guys $740 for 12 lines, he told me. This month, I paid Pure Talk $420 for the exact same service. Thousands of businesses all over the country are saving real money by switching to America's most dependable 5G network, and luck has nothing to do with it. Just dial pound 250 and say micro. That's pound 250 micro to switch to a wireless company that works as hard as you do. Pure talk.
Los Angeles County prosecutors have charged a sheriff's department custodian with destroying evidence from his own case. CBS's Michael Wallace.
Police arrested Tommy Ray Trimble for driving under the influence in July of 2024. The custodian allegedly entered a crime lab vault, found the blood sample he gave after his arrest, heated it up in a microwave oven to destroy it, then returned it to the vault. 2 months later, an investigator noticed the sample had been damaged. Trimble lost his job and pleaded no contest to the DUI charge. Now he faces felony counts of burglary, preparing false evidence, and destroying government records. Michael Wallace, CBS News.
K-pop Demon Hunters is one step closer to another golden moment, the Oscars. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences released the list today, and the Netflix hit is among 35 films eligible for the animated feature film category. Fans will find out if it makes the cut for a nomination on January 22nd. Jennifer Kuiper, CBS News.
And I'm Ed Kalegi in the Bloomberg Newsroom. Here are some of the stories we're watching. U.S. officials are having early discussions on whether to let NVIDIA sell its H200 artificial intelligence chips to China. This according to people familiar with the matter. Megan O'Sullivan, former Deputy National Security Advisor under the George W. Bush administration, says possible deals like this concern Washington.
Some of this goes to how far ahead you think China is. Is it actually very close to reaching or matching the U.S. capability when it comes to these chips and it comes to the development of AI? And if you think it is right on America's heels, then maybe you think allowing them to import very high-end chips is not going to change the landscape very much.
You can hear more from Megan O'Sullivan on the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. President Trump's team has held internal talks about H200 chip shipments. In recent days, no final decision has been made. If approved, the H200 move would constitute a significant easing of U.S. trade restrictions designed to curtail China's prowess in artificial intelligence. Boston Fed President Susan Collins is a guest on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Odd Lots podcast, where she discusses the path forward for the Fed.
If we were seeing evidence, if I were seeing evidence that the labor market were notably deteriorating, I would take that very seriously, and that certainly could justify, near-term additional easing. And so I'm, careful to kind of qualify my statements based on what I'm seeing at the moment, that it is based on balancing risks.
That's Boston Fed President Susan Collins. Get the full conversation on the Bloomberg Odd Lots podcast. Download it wherever you get your podcasts. As we've been reporting on Bloomberg, President Trump said he wants to see Zohran Mamdani succeed, saying after a highly anticipated sit-down that he'd feel very comfortable living in a New York run by the mayor-elect, and that he doesn't anticipate cutting off funding for the country's most populous city.
No, I don't expect. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great.
The Friday numbers on Wall Street, the Dow ended 493. That's just over 1%. NASDAQ, it was up 195. The S&P gained 64. The 10-year Treasury yields at 4.06%. The 2-year at 3.50%. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kalegi. This is Bloomberg.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Cloudy skies tonight, some showers moving in after midnight, low 40 to 45. Showers come to an end Saturday morning, will clear out in the afternoon, high 50 to 55. Becoming partly cloudy Saturday night, a little cooler, will drop to the lower to middle 30s, coolest in the suburbs. Partly sunny skies expected on Sunday, high 45 to 50. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Podcast Spotlight Hour on Bloomberg Radio. Welcome to the Odd Lots podcast on Bloomberg Radio. I'm Joe Wasenthal.
And I'm Tracy Alloway.
Today you are listening to our conversation with Sagar and Jetty, co-host of Breaking Points. We are talking about why AI is about to emerge as a huge issue in American politics. I'm glad we're not like politics reporters.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
cannot imagine what that job is.
We have to look at some of the stuff that our colleagues in the political media have to report on. And like, look, like a lot of it does touch what we do, and there obviously, like, there's no way to avoid it altogether, and obviously some of the stuff has big implications. But by and large, you know, getting to look at the numbers on the chart, or learning how, you know, debt structures work, or learning how cardboard boxes work, is just much more, it's very satisfying to be relative to.
You prefer the lines over the lines coming from the mouths of politicians.
That's right. The right.
Lines over lines.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
But it's gonna fall apart, I think, because I think this AI story is such high stakes. And there's so many different policy questions, et cetera, whether it's related to electricity prices or the possibility for labor displacement. I think there's basically no way at this point that 2028, maybe even 2026, AI somehow is going to be a big political story in a way that it was not really in 2024.
Well, I think you're already seeing it in 2025, right?
Yeah.
So we had Sarah Fryer came out and said she was talking about maybe getting a government backstop for AI CapEx spend.
This is the OpenAI CFO.
Yes, and of course she rolled it back a little bit, but it got
But not really.
And it got everyone talking about, you know, what is the government's involvement or obligations here? We know that J.D. Vance, of course, has been supported by Peter Thiel, who has very strong and possibly idiosyncratic opinions when it comes to AI. And of course, there's the labor market aspect. There's also electricity prices. Inflation is still a big political challenge for the administration, and having all these data centers consume energy is pushing price up. And so I expect you'll hear a lot about AI.
I don't think, you know, we're recording this number 13. I don't, like, we're probably not currently in a recession, but the economy is booming, but who knows exactly. But, you know, imagine a recession is going on. And here is this technology where many of its biggest backers talk about the ability to replace a lot of labor. And, you know, there's some debate, but there's this talk about placing greater strain on electricity. And as you mentioned, there's the possibility that, maybe the government should backstop. I mean, this is a powder keg.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, we have to learn, though, about the different factors and how it's going to play out. For a very long time, talking about the politics of AI on his own show for a long time. Literally, the specific guest, we're going to be speaking with Sagar and Jetty. He is the co-host of Breaking Point's massive, popular podcast. Knows a lot more about all the political dimensions than we do. So, Sagar, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, guys. Long-time listener, and congratulations on the 10-year anniversary.
Thank you so much. You've been doing these segments on AI and the blowing up on YouTube, huh?
Yeah. I mean, purely analytics-wise, I have a little bit of a test here for how the people are feeling. And I think you summed it up actually really well, Joe, is in a time of economic precarity, a very low consumer sentiment, when Dario, Elon, and Sam Altman just routinely go on podcasts in 2025, right? And they're just like, yeah, we are going to replace you. You don't have to work anymore. It's basically the embodiment of that World Economic Forum meme about you will own nothing and be happy. And so, I mean, I don't think that they really understand the implications that a lot of us are actually taking their words very seriously, and I'm increasingly tapped into both data center backlash, which is real, and we have to sit at politics, which is power bases very recently were massively influenced by AI and data centers specifically. And I'm watching this like fascinating. Horseshoe is really not the right word, because horseshoe implies, you know, far right and far left. I sent you a tweet earlier today, Joe, which kind of brings it together. It was like, it's Tim Miller of the Bulwark and Brian Green, co-host of mine, far left, and Matt Wolf are all agree on attacking AI with John Favreau of Pod Save America coming in. We're not really a horseshoe, are we? Like, we're the entire spectrum of American politics all agreeing to stand in opposition, I think, to what one of the points about is where we do not feel that we are in control of this technology. We are not fully in. And I think that's something that was also one of that kind of the entire right, the AI is vice president or vice president correct. But at the same time,
electricity prices and potentially massive labor market?
Yeah, great question. And I think actually that might be the politicians not really getting to the heart of the issue. And we have to separate the AI technology and the promises that were originally there, which we can probably strategically agree, like we need to maintain technological advancement. And then the current way that it's structured, where it's basically in the hands of 3 or 4 like super CEOs and everything kind of being rolled up. Fundamentally, that you guys are know about a lot more than I do, but because of the cost of compute of data centers, specifically like the big tech companies, are the ones that are in control. So I think we should disaggregate like the idea of AI itself as a technology, potential open source, and usefulness from the way that it's actually being structured, used, and controlled. And I think that's really where a lot of the pushback is. And also, though, I would say, politicians, this may seem counterintuitive, but are often the last people to know whenever something organically is pushing up. I'm, I guess, on the forefront of a YouTube show. I mean, in ways, I have real-time analytics day to day about how people are feeling. You only get a democratic kind of feel about this once every 2 to 4 years. So it can take a long time for this to bubble up through the halls of Washington and kind of get rid of some of the 2018, 2019, more think tank talking points that I think that you're describing there, Tracy.
David Sachs, the co-host of the Olin podcast and the White House's AI and crypto czar, he says all the negativity is because of effective altruists and that sort of movement in San Francisco that's pushing these doom scenarios. Are all these people that you follow and talk to, or that follow you, are they all like reading EA Substacks? Is that where they're getting
They have no idea what EA even is. I've actually had to do a few explainers on the show about effective altruism. And again, the vast majority of my audience, these are Uber drivers, hotels, these are just normal people who are kind of like going about their day-to-day life. They're absolutely wrong on this issue. I mean, he may be structurally correct in terms of the way that the rhetoric around AI that causes a Dario and an Elon and others like go on shows and talk specifically about how you're not going to work, but you're going to be okay. This whole idea that kind of backstops EA, but this is really just like small D democratic like pushback, I really think. And I also think an idea I've really been rolling around in my head, I'm curious for what you guys think, is that at the heart of the social media revolution were some newer upstarts. We'd never heard of Mark Zuckerberg. We'd never heard of, even if we push back to Google's, these guys were revolutionary entrepreneurs. This time around, they sold us the promise of social media. And regardless of whether you think it's good or not, we don't really have a high level of societal trust in, the Arab Spring and all that. And these are the very same people now making these multi-billion-dollar, in some cases trillion-dollar bets on AI and telling us to trust them. So that's something that really belies Mark Zuckerberg of the AI space. But I don't know, Alexander Wang, like he now works for Mark Zuckerberg, right? It's just fundamentally like a little bit different in terms of who the key players are who are trying to tell us about the beneficiary of the technology. And I also think, they're no longer talking about the things that they originally did. Like they were like, we're going to cure cancer. It's like, well, Sam, why are you talking about erotica porn? Because that's a little bit different. It's like maybe the internet and ChatGPT is just going to be the exact same as the internet as it always has been, which is basically increasing, user time in ChatGPT, putting some ads in there, just an immiserating experience, which of course also has high levels of efficiency for business users.
I was going to say exactly that. I'm not sure it's that people don't trust the promise, it's that the promise itself doesn't seem that enticing at the moment. You're going to lose your job, and AI is going to get to do all the fun stuff in human life, like make pictures and movies and
children are going to get married to an AI model. Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I thought, man, which is the biggest step. I was like, wow, man, we're not talking about biomedical, we're not talking about ChatGPT curing cancer and all of this. I mean, to be fair to him, he has talked about the OpenAI Foundation, how they're going to try and move things in that direction, but all of the public consumption and everything being, geared. I don't know if either of you are NFL fans. Have you noticed the number of ChatGPT ads during NFL games? Oh, I haven't noticed. Oh, it's every game. And it's like, here, ChatGPT is designing my workout. ChatGPT is designing my vacation. Listen, no hate, but it's basically an idea ad, right? This is not cancer curing. It's Instagram for teens. It's ChatGPT. Microsoft Copilot, I believe, ran an ad about image generation, the Studio Ghibli thing. Yeah. I mean, that's not enterprise groundbreaking technology. Like, this is like you're burning data center, or like you're increasing my power bill so that people can do Studio Ghibli recreate. Like, I'm out on this, that's how I feel.
You said something interesting, which is that even, prior to
AI having come out prior to late 2022 when ChatGPT burst on the scene, people were already souring on these big tech moguls, on the right specifically, but really across, there's concern about the algorithm, what's it doing, shadow banning, are certain things being labeled as fake news that aren't fake news, there was all the backlash against YouTube for what videos they allowed in the pandemic, etc. It feels like just intuitively, there is no reason that all of these concerns don't quickly map very cleanly onto AI concerns.
You're exactly right. I mean, it already has, right? And in some of the early cases, we've all been around. We remember the early content about Facebook moderation. Remember all of that? I mean, look at what's happening with ChatGPT. Story after story about these suicides and now erotica. And, they're saying the same level of stuff that Facebook used to say, like, oh, we have, controls in place. But, when your technology is being implicated in all these insane lawsuits, and you have screenshots and stuff that come out that make people go, whoa, I don't even know if I want my 19 or 20-year-old anywhere close to this. That really, because of the way that we all lived through those past conversations show, they track exactly onto Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, look at the stuff he's had to deal with the Meta AI, Instagram chatbots, for teenagers. And they're trying to get ahead of it. To the NFL thing, I watch these ads closely. Like one of the big ads right now, ad campaigns, Instagram for teens, which they're like, we have safety stuff, that's kind of baked in, and they're trying to get ahead of it.
Stay tuned for more of our interview with Sagar and Jetty, co-host of Breaking Points. We're talking about the political ramifications of artificial intelligence. To hear the full conversation, subscribe to Off Lots wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Tracy Alloway.
And I'm Joe Weisenthal, and this is Off Lots on Bloomberg Radio.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Lots of clouds around for the evening. We'll see some showers moving in late tonight. Lows dropping to 40 to 45. Showers Saturday morning. Sunshine returns in the afternoon. High 50 to 55. Becoming partly cloudy Saturday night. Lows 30 to 35. Partly sunny skies for Sunday. High only getting up to 45 to 50. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
And I'm Ed Kalecki in the Bloomberg Newsroom. Here are some of the stories we're watching. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, once loyal supporter of President Trump, who has become a critic, said Friday night she is resigning from Congress in January. Greene, in a more than 10-minute video posted online, explained her decision.
Hi, everyone. I've always represented the common American man and woman as a member of the House of Representatives, which is why I've always been despised in Washington, D.C., and just never fit in.
Greene's resignation followed a public fallout with Trump in recent months as the Congresswoman criticized him for his stance on files related to Jeffrey Epstein, along with foreign policy and health care. She said her last day would be January 5th. President Trump said he wants to see Zohran Mamdani succeed, saying after a highly anticipated sit-down that he'd feel very comfortable living in a New York run by the mayor-elect and that he does not anticipate cutting off funding for the country's most populous city.
No, I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great.
The president added he was surprised by the mayor-elect.
We had a meeting today that actually surprised me. He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with.
The meeting was the first between the two leaders who have clashed publicly over their political agendas but are seeking to determine if they can work together. Their talks held high stakes for the governance of the capital of global finance and for their respective political parties ahead of next year's midterm election. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito is relatively sort of Republican-drawn congressional map in Texas. A little more than an hour after the state and its GOP leaders sought emergency intervention. Alito's late Friday order applies until either he or the full court acts again. He signaled quick action, asking for opponents of the map to file a response by Monday. A 3-judge panel blocked the new map earlier this week. The Friday numbers on Wall Street, the Dow ended 493, that's just over 1%. NASDAQ was up 195, the S&P gained 64. 10-year Treasury yield stands at 4.06%. The 2-year yield, that's at 3.50%. Global news, 24 hours a day, and whatever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kalecki, and this is Bloomberg.
Breaking news first. Market volatility continues.
Renewed concerns around AI valuations. The markets are just whipping around.
Harder hit than equities has been Bitcoin.
Bloomberg 1130. First with news. First with reaction.
You don't see steep reversals like this very often.
The reality is there's still questions about the sustainability of AI. This will say what the Federal Reserve policy is going to look like.
For the latest headlines and smart analysis.
We should get used to seeing some more of this chop.
Stay with Bloomberg 1130.
Companies are staying private longer, and trillions are flowing into private credit, equity, infrastructure, and real estate. VanEck GPZ ETF provides access to the public equities of top private asset managers. When markets evolve, your portfolio should too. Discover GPZ from VanEck. Investing involves substantial risk and high volatility, including possible loss of principal. Visit vaneck.com/GPZ radio to read and consider the prospectus containing the investment objective, risks, and fees of the fund carefully before investing.
You know that expression, put a little spring in your step? Well, whoever said it must have been talking about Glide Step hands-free Skechers slip-ins. Because with Glide Step, you pillow-like soft landing, then an explosive takeoff. It makes walking feel effortless. So springy, it's almost like you're floating. And speaking of effortless, have you tried hands-free Skechers slip-ins technology? Just step in, and instantly your shoes are on. No bending down, no touching. Try Glide Step hands-free Skechers slip-ins at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcast, radio, news.
This is the Podcast Spotlight Hour on Bloomberg Radio. This is On Block from Bloomberg Radio. I'm Joe Weisball.
And I'm Tracy Alloway.
Today's episode is looking at the political side of the AI build-up. We are speaking with Sagar and Jetty, co-hosts of the Breaking Points podcast.
How would you describe the relationship between, the people running some of the biggest tech companies now versus years past? Because I remember, we're talking a little bit about some of the scandals and discussions about political influence and what is actually shown on Facebook. And I get the sense that once upon a time in DC, people did kind of feel like big tech was in control, right? It was DC coming to big tech for help. And now I'm thinking back to the inauguration when we had, people like Bezos, and I think Zuckerberg was there as well.
Yes, he was.
And they're sort of, I don't know how, I saw one person, I'm not going to describe it this way myself, but I did see one person describe it as a hostage situation where the big tech CEOs, they're all gathered in front of Trump and they seem kind of scared.
They're smiling.
They're smiling, but not with their eyes. How would you describe the relationship now between the administration and, the bigwigs of big tech?
Yeah, that's a great question because, what I'm talking about is small d Democratic politics. Now you're asking about power politics. Power politics here is very different. I mean, David Sachs has navigated his position incredibly well. Joe, there was a funny incident. I think I talked to you about this, where I found a snippet, I think it was a Financial Times piece, and it was just about, it was like AI accounts for 80% of stock gains and X% of GDP in terms of CapEx. And David Sachs retweeted it, and I was like, oh, so you think that's good? I was like, okay. But, that actually, if you're in the Trump White House right now, you need this. You need the rally. You need the GDP and the data center spend because that's what's propping up. Again, you're the economist just from my listening to you and reading Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Financial Times, and others. That's a main reason why, Joe, you were like, well, I don't think we're in a recession. Derek Thompson is written very eloquently about this as well. It's just how much of that spend currently accounts for why things seem okay. So there is a real alliance, I think, right now between the Jensen, David, and even Sam Altman and others. They all come to the White House and announce their crazy deals for a reason. They get these awesome press conferences from Trump. I mean, there's the famous moment where he leans over to Trump. It's like, I didn't know how much you wanted to say. I'm like, wow. Okay, so, you could describe that as at heel. You could also say he's got to bend over and kiss the ring while also being able to basically just do whatever he wants. So there is, I think, a very, alliance of convenience right now where the amount of money they're pumping into the economy, the amount of stock value that they're creating is extremely beneficial to the Scott Bessents and others of the world, talking about MAGA economics.
Let's talk a little bit more about electoral politics specifically. Ron DeSantis actually seems to be trying to carve a lane for himself early on, even before the Sarah comment, actually saying no bailouts for AI companies. And what do you see right now in terms of candidate position?
Yeah, it's all very early signaling. And that's actually, I love this because usually one of the things I hate most about politics, it's all top down. You have guys who are running for city council talking about impeachment or something. Yeah. It's like, dude, tell me about the road, But actually, this one is really bottom up. The data center stuff, it's Tucson, actually here in Northern Virginia, where I live, there's a big comment and there's a lot of public controversy about data centers. My state, Virginia, 40% of our power is consumed actually by data centers. Oregon is like 33%, I believe. There's been a lot of local stuff, and it hasn't really bubbled to the national level. And I would say people here, they care about money, but they also care about electability. So there's an ocean of money to be had if you're, quote, pro-AI or pro-tech, but they'll always choose their own careers when and if, it does come down to that. I haven't seen it bubble up yet. I did see, I'm not sure if you guys did, that Bernie Sanders and a few other progressives signed a letter against data centers specifically, and that was the first indication that I'm like, the staffers, they're paying attention, right? They're listening to the pods, they're reading Dave Weigel's piece about data center politics, and they're trying to operationalize that into something. At the national level, you're exactly right in terms of Ron DeSantis tried to take that lane about bailout, and that actually gets to something very recently where you talked about Sarah's comments. I mean, we did a segment about that. It was huge about the OpenAI bailout because people can feel it. They're like, I've seen this movie before. They're, yeah, they make $20 billion, but they've got $75 billion losses in 2028. They've got $1 trillion in committed spend. The price, the P ratios and all this are so crazy. And if it doesn't work out, they're going to say, oh, well, we need you to bail us out, or we need you to build the data centers for us and take all the most expensive part of our business out. They are inherently distrustful already of the numbers. And I think this is very American. Like, you don't want to be controlled. And the AI people tell us about how this is the second industrial revolution. And it's like, well, then we should probably look to the politics of the previous industrial revolutions. The railroad obviously has tremendous benefits. It just doesn't take a week, or it took a week to go to California instead of 3 months. That's awesome. But, very quickly in the 1880s and 1890s, titanic, uprisings in the Midwest of farmers being controlled, and anti-railroad politicians were some of the original, anti-industrial populists in Washington, even though originally everybody was really sold. I didn't know the idea of anti-railroad politicians. Oh, yeah, there definitely were. There were all throughout the 1890s, some of the original populist parties, you go and look at what that all was. A lot of it was about the railroads. And, there's legendary stories. Texas, where you and I are from, Joe, White Hat? I'd have to, right back. Yeah, there were also, people like Sam Rayburn, actually, famously, is very anti-railroad. He wouldn't take the free railroad passes. These were, big stories all the way up until the 1920s. And so I see a very similar kind of track, except that I'm not so sure that the socialized benefits will be as good as the railroad. The railroad, at the end of the day, it was awesome. I could go to California in a week. I don't have to take the stagecoach or the Oregon Trail or whatever. This time around, I'm like, listen, I don't know if you guys use Sora. Sorry. It's not worth the power bill. It's not worth it.
Tracy's insisting that I correct that I'm not really a real Texan. I only went to college there.
He's a faux Texan.
Okay.
All right.
This is important to me as someone with a dad who was raised in Dallas. Anyway, I was thinking, we were talking about populism in the 1800s. And did you ever see the interpretations of The Wizard of Oz as like?
Yeah, something about
exactly. It was horrible. It seems like they wanted to use the silver back currency, and a lot of it mostly was tied to populism. Anyway, I wanted to go back to power politics for 1 second and ask what the heck J.D. Vance is going to do here, because it's not impossible that he is the chosen successor to Trump in whatever time frame. And in that case, he's sort of stuck between, I guess, 2 T's here, populism and Peter Thiel.
Well, it's a lot more P's than that, because it's populism, it's Trump, it's the Thiel thing, I've always thought it was, frankly, a little bit overstated, in terms of influence. But regardless, I would say more like Thiel's fear or Thiel's thought, if that makes sense. As you guys know, probably most people listening to this, there's an entire, ecosystem around, 0 to 1 posting and all of that within tech. Anyway, so that's sphere, let's call it rectangle, I guess, to be extremely reductive. That sphere is really the one which currently embodies, really a lot of this more pro-AI direction. Let's say Palantir, Alex Karp, and others. But even he is fascinated, right? Because he's pro-AI, but only for Palantir, and he thinks it's the best stuff. So, these things do break down, but JD, look, he's going to be in a tough position as well, because it's not exactly like he repudiates the Trump administration. I actually think it's one of his biggest weaknesses going into 2028. You guys will remember they savaged Kamala for the what would you do different conversation from Biden. How do you answer that when Donald Trump is still alive and you have to run? You're going to get destroyed if you say the truth. And look, I don't know where things are going to end up. Trump is basically trending in Biden territory right now in terms of his approval ratings. And so, look, we saw that movie. And in my opinion, when you start chart posting about how the economy is actually good, you're cooked. To borrow a phrase from the youth about politics. But yeah, the power politics of it are really, I think, trepidatious, I think, for a lot of the right, because they don't want to get away from Elon and from his money, right? Elon is very, very powerful center, I think, in Republican politics. XAI, he's got this huge new data center project. I'm sure you guys have read or anything about that. He's probably going to demand, certain things. And at the same time, a huge amount of the right-wing commentariat who would probably be more J.D. Vance ideologically positioned, let's say like the Matt Walshes of the world, the Tucker Carlson of the world, these people are straight up on record as this is, demonic, way to stand humanity, and it's going to be very tough. I actually think it might be the single toughest position that he'll have to navigate in the campaign, and I think that the left, the political left in particular, they are looking at this data center stuff. They are all over it. More Perfect Union is one of those, it's like a Bernie-aligned institution. They have been all over this issue. So I'm watching the populist left really, really grab onto it. And I think a Democratic position in 2028 is going to come down hard in terms of either regulation or protecting Americans, reforming power, however it's going to be. They're going to be there, and the right is going to have a very tough time.
It's interesting because, even 10 years ago, we thought of Silicon Valley as, basic to being democratic a lot, right? Most big tech executives, and I still think, most people think this is gone. Most Democratic, including a lot of high people at these tech companies. But there's this well-known shift that everyone talks about, and they've gotten much more comfortable. But it feels like, to me, they could, they switch sides to some extent. They could kind of end up friendless and all this.
Yeah. Oh, I think that they massively overplayed their hand with Doge. And look, if we're being honest, just look at the stats. It's a total failure in terms of its stated project. You could debate whether USAID or whatever is bad. Treasury data is public, guys. You can go read it for yourself in terms of spending. That's one thing. But two, you're exactly right, though, in terms of the fair weather friend nature of all of this is that, A, in terms of the way that a lot of the Democratic base has been radicalized at this point, they're never going back. And then in the right-wing coalition, I don't want to go too deep in the weeds here, but I actually kind of want you to go link. I kind of want you to go deep. Yeah, the tech right, let's take this H1B thing, for example. This is a huge split right now in the political right, because a lot of these tech guys are very pro H1B. Right. Elon famously said he would fight to the death over the issue of H1B. This was during the whole fight, in December before Trump took office. And Trump ultimately, he just did an interview a few days ago where he embraced H1B, say actually we need more talent. But there's a lot of the activist political right, which is very against that, and increasingly are blaming a lot of these tech right politicians for hijacking the administration. So that's why, for them, I would be very careful as to how exactly, they're going to navigate.
More to come from our conversation on the political effects and responses to AI. We're speaking with Sagar and Jetty, co-hosts of Breaking Point. I'm Tracy Alloway.
And I'm Joe Weisenthal, and this is Othlots on Radio.
To hear all of our episodes in full, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
This is New York's only 24-hour source for world markets and breaking business news. Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS.
CBS News special report. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, Trump loyalist turned critic, announces in a video on social media,
I'll be resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026.
and I look forward to seeing many of you again sometime in the future. It comes after a very public falling out with President Trump and much of her party. The Congresswoman says on social media that she has always represented the common American man and woman as a member of the House, which is why she has always been despised in Washington, D.C. and never fit in. Green was one of the most vocal and visible supporters of Trump's Make America Great Again politics. I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for, only to fight and win my election while Republicans will likely lose the midterm. CBS News Special Report, I'm Jennifer Kuiper.
And I'm Ed Kalecki in the Bloomberg Newsroom. Here are some of the stories we're watching. U.S. officials are having early discussions on whether to let NVIDIA sell its H200 artificial intelligence chips to China. This according to people familiar with the matter. Megan O'Sullivan, former Deputy National Security Advisor under the George W. Bush administration, says possible deals like this concern Washington.
Some of this goes to how far ahead you think China is. Is it actually very close to reaching or matching the U.S. capability when it comes to these chips and it comes to the development of AI? And if you think it is right on America's heels, then maybe you think allowing them to import very high-end chips is not going to change the landscape very much.
You can hear more from Megan O'Sullivan on the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. President Trump's team has held internal talks about H200 chip shipments in recent days. Final decision has been made. If approved, the H200 move would constitute a significant ease of U.S. trade restrictions designed to curtail China's prowess in artificial intelligence. Boston Fed President Susan Collins is a guest on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Odd Lots podcast, where she discusses the path forward for the Fed.
If we were seeing evidence, if I were seeing evidence that the labor market were notably deteriorating, I would take that very seriously, and that certainly could justify, near-term additional easing. And so I'm, careful to qualify my statements based on what I'm seeing at the moment, that it is based on balancing risks.
That's Boston Fed President Susan Collins. Get the full conversation on the Bloomberg Odd Lots podcast. Download it wherever you get your podcasts. As we've been reporting on Bloomberg, President Trump said he wants to see Bowen Mamdani succeed, saying after a highly anticipated sit-down that he'd feel very comfortable living in a New York run by the mayor-elect, and that he doesn't anticipate cutting off funding for the country's most populous city.
No, I don't expect, I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great.
The Friday numbers on Wall Street, the Dow added 493, that's just over 1%. NASDAQ, it was up 195. The S&P 64, the 10-year Treasury yield is at 4.06%, the 2-year at 3.50%. Global news, 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kalecki. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Surveillance, your home for insight on international relations, with guests like Lindsay Newman of G0 Media.
We are absolutely seeing the beginning of an emerging Trump doctrine.
Elizabeth Economy of the Council on Foreign Relations.
China has the stronger hand, and at some level it's always had the stronger hand.
And Admiral Michael Mullen.
The most dangerous guy on the planet. It's not just going to stop with Ukraine.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 on YouTube, the Bloomberg Business app, and always on Bloomberg 1130.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility, he knows keeping the line up and running is a top priority. That's why he chooses Grainger. Because when a drive belt gets damaged, Grainger makes it easy to find the exact specs for the replacement product he needs. And next day delivery helps ensure he'll have everything in place and running like clockwork. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Bloomberg Radio is on Amazon Alexa. Get live business news 24 hours a day, anywhere you have an Alexa device. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Weather is brought to you by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle, founder of Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 to make quality, custom-made blinds affordable to everyone. Traditional window covering retailers are expensive. Our prices are low, and our blinds are guaranteed to fit. Blindster.com.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Skies to be cloudy as we head into the nighttime hours. Some showers likely overnight, low dropping to 40 to 45. Showers ending Saturday morning will clear out during the afternoon, high 50 to 55. Partly cloudy, cooler Saturday night, low in the lower to middle 30s. Partly sunny skies on Sunday, high only in the middle to upper 40s. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 3-0.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand, and in your cast feed.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast, a conversation with Beth Cowett, Bloomberg opinion columnist on U.S. retail.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think about this now, but a decade ago, Walmart was one of the most reviled companies in America, right? It was being criticized for paying its employees low wages, for wiping out mom and pop retailers, for basically creating a culture of disposable consumerism. So it really was getting hit from a lot of different angles. And rather than just ignore that press or hire an army of PR people, it decided to do something about it. And Seth MacMillan decided we're going to invest in our people. And $2.7 billion over a couple of years. And we now know this really paid off.
So, I mean, for Doug MacMillan, to me, after reading your article, this would be one of one of his lasting legacies.
I really think so. I think that, he's been at the company now more than a decade. I think this will be among the most enduring things that he has done. I think I'm not sure that the company would be in the place today if he had not really addressed this.
And let's be clear about what exactly he did with that $2.7 billion. Pay increases, or his training, and really just attracting a better quality worker.
Yeah, and the way he did this was, right, it was pay increases, but more than anything else, it was creating not low-paying jobs, but a career, right? There was now a path for people who started at Walmart to move up the ranks. And that was really important, right, to attracting more ambitious employees, to getting them to stay. And I think that shifted the whole culture of the company.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app at Bloomberg.com.
This is the Bloomberg Money Minute. The markets closed much higher on Wall Street, ending a volatile week. The Dow adding 493 points, up over 1%. The Nasdaq was up 195, and the S&P also added 64 points. Stocks closing higher despite consumer sentiment dropping to one of the lowest levels on record. Researchers at the University of Michigan say consumers are still worried about high prices, high inflation, and a shaky job market. The Trump administration is reportedly having early discussions on whether to let NVIDIA sell its H200A1 chips to China. The move would mark a major win for the world's most valuable company, but officials say no decisions have been made. NVIDIA would need license approvals to sell, which are required under export controls that Washington first imposed in 2022. And Wicked for Good is now out in theaters and is expected to break the box office this weekend, making as much as $200 million worldwide. That would be the best start for a Broadway musical adaptation ever. Monica Riggs, Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcast, radio, news.
This is the Podcast Spotlight Hour on Bloomberg Radio.
You're listening to the Odd Lots Podcast on radio. I'm Joe Weisenthal.
And I'm Tracy Alloway.
On today's show, we are discussing why AI will be a huge topic in the 2028 and probably even 2026 elections. We are speaking with Sagar Shetty, co-host of the Breaking Point podcast. We mentioned a lot about the white Republicans. I actually really like a lot of these guys, but when I think about the other side of the aisle, and I think about some of these tensions, you mentioned more perfect union and some of these more kind of populist left things, I'm not very bullish on the abundant debt right now, and how that sort of puts the liberal life or take the party in a sort of more, I don't know, centrist, what centrist, moderate, liberal, realm, etc. Yeah, whatever it is. I don't know how you feel. Give us your sort of your view on the other side of the aisle.
Definitely. I mean, the interesting thing about the whole abundance thing and all of that is, I think, what it's missing is a serious control. And, it's like more housing costs, but it doesn't get to ownership, I guess, the feeling of like the ability to control your own destiny, which I think is really baked into the American spirit and the American project. And, you see stuff like this about debates around housing, and, they'll kind of ridicule this idea about corporate ownership. And, I'm not going to get into the weeds about whether that's even true or not. I know there's a lot of controversy, but the idea is definitely very popular, right? For a lot of people. And the reason why is fundamentally that I am being priced out of my ability to buy a home. Really what it's about, the individuality of reclaiming your own debt. And that's why those two things are very linked. It's about power, to kind of bring back to Tracy's question earlier, being China, etc. It's the technology is not the same as the companies that are in charge. And when you see these swelling valuations and toxic bailouts and encroachment into your daily life or your office, see headlines about firing workers, on the promise of AI, none of this goes to the heart about democratic input. I was thinking about that in terms of the ChatGPT suicide question, which I know is fringe from their point of view, but I think it's important if billions of people are going to use your technology. And Sam famously in a Tucker Carlson interview was like, well, in a country where assisted suicide is legal, like, would you direct people to those resources? He effectively said yes. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, then, ChatGPT's mental health standards, in my opinion, like there needs to be stuff hashed out in the U.S. Congress and at the state and the local level where like we all agree on what so-called guardrails and acceptable norms are. And I can't just be leaving it to Sam Altman. I'm sorry. I think, no offense to that guy. It's not even about him. It's about everybody. No one person should have that immense amount of power, which is going to affect millions and millions.
Yeah, and it just seems incredibly difficult to have any democratic input into what are effectively black boxes, right? And have always been black boxes. I have a very basic question, but is anyone in DC using AI in an interesting way? I imagine, people are probably editing policy papers or whatever with it and doing some research, but like, is anyone, I don't know, creating lots of AI-driven bots to sway conversations, or I don't know, come up with solutions about campaign finance?
I'm not privy to any of the secret stuff like you. I mean, I'm not either. Just to be clear, I mean, it kind of begs the question: is anything interesting being done with AI? Right? What you just said of editing papers. Everybody's editing papers. Great. Awesome. A friend of mine, John Coogan, I'm sure you guys know. Yeah. John had a great analogy to AI. He was like, I think it'll be like the credit card, like frictionless payments. It enables an entire new ecosystem. If you build wealth, it'll make your life like a little bit better, and all that. I think that's basically the technology, right? Summarizing, editing. It's a better Google. That's cool and all that. But I haven't yet seen like some mass sophisticated thing. I mean, to be honest, most people at DC are probably using AI for editing purposes, research, to check things. What else? I mean, image generation to slander your political opponent. That's a pretty big one. We use it for thumbnails for our YouTube videos. I guess that's cool. I mean, yeah, it's nice. It's definitely nice. It's not that I don't have. I also have Photoshop guys who work for me, so they use it a little bit every once in a while. But I haven't seen anything truly novel. I really haven't.
In terms of elected officials who maybe a few years ago this would have been a surprise, but who seem to have very good intuitions about things. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of these names is like, oh, I'm like, she seems apt in a way that maybe people wouldn't have guessed. Has she been talking about AI at all?
I haven't looked. Definitely, I haven't seen anything in particular. I can almost guess where she would land, though. Yeah. Especially, look, her own home state is not ground zero for a statewide referendum again.
Talk to us about that. We have this Georgia election. I know it was like kind of powers and electricity stuff. It's kind of directly on the ballot, right?
Yeah, two races literally about power. Both made Democratic candidates. They made data centers, power usage, like a central part of their campaign, and they won a huge victory. I don't want to describe the entire thing. Okay. Let's be honest, in a national environment, a lot of people are voting for Democrats. Right. But it was an awesome night for Democrats, right? But look, I mean, in a certain way, like those arguments still are really finding a lot of salience because these stories about power going up. And look, I mean, everybody remembers, the Walmartization conversation, the Amazon warehouse conversation. Nobody loves this idea of these big companies coming in, buying land, using it on resources, driving prices up. Nobody buys the BS anymore about how this is going to create a ton of jobs. I mean, definitely some construction jobs, but nobody's really under the illusion. Everybody knows tech is a power law business. You know, the vast majority of the wealth is going to flow up to the top of the CEO and the net worth of Zuck and Elon and the rest of these people. So that's where the politics of this really matter. And, you know, Heat Map, I shout them out. They wrote a great piece about the data center backlash is swallowing American politics. And you should go read it, just to even look at polling, not just about Georgia. I mean, this is bipartisan at every level. And younger generations are the most anti-data center, anti-AI kind of politics. And I mean, look, they're suffering. I mean, they have a high unemployment rate right now. A lot of them either blame AI or look at AI as one of the reasons why they're having a tough time in the labor market. And, you know, it doesn't help whenever you see Wall Street Journal articles just about white-collar companies increasingly bet on more productivity out of existing workforce. Like, this stuff confirmed, it both confirmed by SEC and it's real, so it's not even particularly a virus.
What is the state of antitrust at the moment? Because I remember at the beginning of this year, it seemed like it was emerging as a possibly bipartisan issue, or at least a direct link between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. Everyone wanted to go after the big tech companies, possibly for different reasons, but you know, the outcome's the same. Is that still a live issue in DC?
I mean, look, speaking quite candidly, like, the state of the government is like large portions of it for sale. And for, you know, large portions of it are basically, you know, they are very beholden to financial interests. I'll put that very politely, shall I? At least about who can get to come here, who can get and have the influence in administration. I don't want to pursue it entirely. You know, when big money or a donor or something like that is not involved, the FCC has done some good work and has been at least tried and confirmed, but they've also, quite honestly, you know, moved back some of the antitrust cases and others that Lena Khan put forward. So I would say it's mixed. I mean, I think this is, look, this stuff is happening, so I don't even know what I'm afraid of saying. Like, it convenes the tech CEOs, and they are, how much money do you want me to announce? And they'll just do it. You know, I mean, that's pretty much the whole ballgame. And I think that gets to the kind of power alliance I talked about earlier. Like, the Trump administration really needs these companies for headlines because they're propping up the economy and their stock market.
So this is exactly where I wanted to ask you about next. If there's one tension here, which is the stock market itself has sort of become a populist issue, right? It's very strange to talk about the stock market and populism in the same sentence. But you see all of the different people, you know, who will randomly pull up on their phone various stock positions.
Well, Trump himself also benchmarks and
Trump talks about the stock market because, you know, this whole thing, you know, mainstream term, etc. But a lot of young people who are middle class or lower middle class, feel either very directly in the stock market, but we feel like they have some very interest in it. How does that intersect with it? What do you feel like among like the commenters on your show in terms of like how they think about just the sort of betting and everything, investing and trading?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I don't know, there's like a couple of different angles to it, right? Because the Trump people ridicule Biden for saying the economy was good, but now they're doing the exact same thing. You guys know, the FCC did pretty well on the economy, right? Let's be honest. The benchmark from the day he took office today, I forget the exact numbers, like 68%. Maybe they're decent return over 2 to 4 year periods, but it's not like anybody at home is like, oh, the economy is so much better. But of course, politicians do that, you know, whenever they come into office. But Joe, I mean, you're not wrong, and I guess this is a much more meta conversation where, I mean, you and I talked about this privately. The numbers got to go up, right? Because all of our futures are in the numbers. Like, we don't have pensions in this country. We don't have a robust social safety net until we turn 65. So in the interim, like, really robust. Yeah, and then it gets very robust. That's a separate combo. But yeah, I mean, in the interim, like, you know, your hopes of retirement, your hopes of buying something or the asset appreciation, like, that's all we got. And I think that the increasing financialization hope is exactly behind crypto, sports betting, issue very passionately against. This is exactly why. I think, you know, it removed a lot of the hope kind of undergirding the stability of the American foundation. And within that, speculation and fast riches. And plus, I mean, the tech is so good. I mean, have you guys played trades on Robinhood, you know, with the and everything? You got to go do it. You know, you got to feel it, put a little bit, put a position behind it. And you'll see why some people get it. Yeah, that's the responsible thing to do. Go put a couple squandered in the SCY. And but you'll just see like
little like
betting.
celebratory
Oh yeah,
animation when you place it.
it's happened to me recently. Congrats. But I mean, I can see how addictive that this can all be, and they send you a million push notifications a day. The opposite of what a good investor should do is like, oh, stock is down 5%, stock is down 2%. They want you clicking and staying on the app and the charts. Everything is designed for you to kind of be in there. So these are big tech companies, which they make a lot of money doing this stuff. And you can see why societally, structurally, and technologically, why this became kind of like a democratic issue.
By the way, while we're recording this, just breaking news from Bloomberg, Thinking Machines Lab, an artificial intelligence startup founded by former OpenAI executive Mira Murati, early talks to raise a new round of funding, a roughly $50 billion valuation. So,
Every time we record an episode about AI, a headline comes out while we're recording.
yes, how's that benchmark where we are?
That is so crazy.
This has been Hot Thoughts on Bloomberg Radio. I'm Tracy Alloway.
And I'm Joe Weisenthal.
To hear the rest of this episode and all of our other interviews, be sure to subscribe to Hot Thoughts wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partner at CBS News.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm Jennifer Kuiper. Georgia Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is resigning. CBS's Linda Kenyon has the latest. The Trump loyalist turned Trump critic says she is leaving in January. In a statement posted on social media, Greene cited a broken Washington, where she said, in her words, nothing ever gets better for the common American man or woman. She also said, the political industrial complex in both parties is ripping this country apart. President Trump and New York City's mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani have had a friendly first-time meeting at the White House. As CBS's Aaron Navarro reports from Washington, the tone struck a noticeable contrast to their comments about each other during the city's mayoral race.
With a warm handshake, President Trump welcomed New York City Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani for what turned out to be a cordial business Friday to the Oval Office.
I feel very confident that he can do a very good job.
As the next mayor of the nation's largest city campaigned in recent months, the president called Mamdani a communist lunatic. Mamdani called Trump's administration authoritarian.
North Dakota's overturned abortion ban is back on the books after the state's highest court could not muster the majority required to deem it unconstitutional. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country faces a difficult choice as he considers the Trump administration's proposal to end the war. CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd.
The peace plan contains what many Ukrainians, as well as allies of Ukraine, are calling capitulation in the form of territorial possessions, a cap on its military, an agreement not to join NATO, and more.
President, he wants a response from Zelensky by Thanksgiving Day. A Christian group said 227 students and teachers have been taken in Nigeria's second school abduction this week. 25 girls were kidnapped in a separate incident on Monday. If you're traveling by air this holiday, you're in good company. CBS's Nicole Valdez at the airport in Nashville, Tennessee explained.
Well, we're only a few days away from Thanksgiving, and the FAA says this could be the busiest Thanksgiving period in more than 15 years. Nearly 18 million people expected to go through TSA and airports across the country for more than 360,000 flights across the U.S.
There are, according to FlightAware, over 5,300 delays within, into, or out of the U.S. today, and almost 300 cancellations. Consumer sentiment slumped to one of the lowest levels on record. CBS's Jason Brooks.
It is a sign that consumers are going to be focused on discounts during the holiday shopping season. There was a double-digit decline in buying conditions, big-ticket items. Inflation expectations improved slightly for the year ahead.
This is CBS News.
The annual Progressive Keys to Progress program provides vehicles to deserving veterans, helping our heroes drive their lives forward. Learn more at keystoprogress.com.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm here to do that. Tax Relief Advocate is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-497-0593. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available to give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with a Better Business. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today. Visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-497-0593. That's 800-497-0593. Tax Relief Advocate. Real solutions for real people. Up and sold for millions. Long before the 1950s TV series,
Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive.
it was Superman the comic book series, a hybrid copy of Superman #1. $1 million. That makes it the most expensive comic book ever sold at auction. 3 brothers in California found it last year while they were cleaning out their late mother's belongings. They say she and her brother had a comics collection, but they'd never seen the books before. One of the siblings had apparently placed it in a box in an attic decades ago and forgotten about it. Deborah Rodriguez, CBS News. Eddie Murphy will receive a Life Achievement Award from the American Film Institute at a gala tribute in LA on April 18th. Murphy is the 51st recipient of the award, joining honorees including Nicole Kidman and Denzel Washington. Jennifer Kuiper, CBS News.
And I'm Ed Kalecki in the Bloomberg Newsroom. Here are some of the stories we're watching. U.S. officials are having early discussions on when to let NVIDIA sell its H200 artificial intelligence chips to China. This according to people familiar with the matter. Megan O'Sullivan, former Deputy National Security Advisor under the George W. Bush administration, says possible deals like this concern Washington.
Some of this goes to how far ahead you think China is. Is it actually very close to reaching or matching the U.S. capability when it comes to these, when it comes to the development of AI? And if you think it is right on America's heels, maybe you think allowing them to import very high-end chips is not going to change the landscape very much.
You can hear more from Megan O'Sullivan on the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. President Trump's team has held internal talks about H2 chip shipments in recent days. No final decision has been made. If approved, the H200 move would constitute a significant easing of U.S. trade restrictions designed to curtail China's prowess in artificial intelligence. A judge has barred the IRS from sharing data on millions of American taxpayers with the Department of Homeland Security after determining that taxpayer and labor groups can challenge the practice. Judge Colleen Collar-Cutelli of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia granted a preliminary injunction that the group sought in response to DHS accessing data on large numbers of Americans. She further stated the agreement signed between the IRS and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is part of DHS, that allowed information sharing. The judge also ordered the IRS to inform the court in advance of any disclosures of taxpayer information it deems lawful. And as we've been reporting on Bloomberg, President Trump says he wants to see Zohran Mamdani succeed, saying after a highly anticipated sit-down that he would feel very comfortable living in a New York run by the mayor-elect, and that he does not anticipate cutting off funding for the country's most populous city.
No, I don't expect, I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great.
The prime numbers on Wall Street, the Dow added 493, NASDAQ up 195, the S&P gained 64, the 10-year Treasury yielded 4.06%, the 2-year 3.50%. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Ed Kalecki. This is Bloomberg.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Sunny skies tonight, some showers moving in after midnight, low 40 to 45. Showers come to an end Saturday morning, will clear out in the afternoon, high 50 to 55. Becoming partly cloudy Saturday night, a little cooler, will drop to the lower to middle 30s, coolest in the suburbs. Partly sunny skies expected on Sunday, high 45 to 50. I'm Scott Kaplan with your 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
This is the business of sports.
Sports are the greatest unscripted show on earth. The next generation of players who really grew up with tech and believe in tech.
Your face is your ticket. Your face is your wallet. Your face is your access to.
And these are such iconic and important buildings for businesses, for COVID was one of the best things ever after the golf. The NFL is a bulletproof business.
Shut up, stupid.
Because there is absolutely no reason why we can't compete this guy.
Come on, is pro pickleball real? Are people really going to tune into this? If you're playing Moneyball with a huge bag of money, you're going to be really, really good.
From Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues.
Shut up, stupid.
I'm Michael Ball.
And I'm Damien Zappa.
Later on.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk with PGA golfer and three-time major winner Jordan Spieth. That's right, I think Jordan Spieth about his annual charity youth golf event and more.
2025 was a really good year for the PGA Tour, and so I think he focused on trying to make the best products the PGA Tour has, and then however it's gonna, fall, it's gonna fall. So we can't really control what's going on, on the live side. It seems like they're happy with where they're at, but at some point, they've shown interest in combining the game.
We will also talk with the founder and CEO of Better, a gaming and sports media company.
All that is on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But first, the MLB just reached new broadcast deal valued at around $800 million with NBC, ESPN, and Netflix.
Here now to break it down is Bloomberg News media reporter Hannah Miller. Hannah, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, you always have brilliant articles. This one is on Major League Baseball and the new deals with NBC, ESPN, and Netflix.
That's right. Yeah, we finally got word on what the media deals are going to look like for MLB.
Well, is this the first time NBC is involved in like 2 decades, or maybe even more, like 25 years? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a really big push with sports with NBC. They want a lot of content. I mean, obviously they're already a powerhouse, but they want to build out their portfolio even more, which is definitely for them.
So, what's the last time this was?
Really fun. And I think that shows for them, their push further into live sports. And we've seen with them, Netflix, they don't always want to go for like a full season of a sport. They like those one-off events, those special things that you can tune into every now and then. So this is a nice get for them. They're the ones that started all of this drama. They opted out early of their original package.